While it's true that Brock Lesnar wrestles only when Halley's Comet appears, you must play devil's advocate and admit that less appearances from him only enhance his aura. When Lesnar shows up, it's an event unto itself, as his incomprehensible power, awing fluidity, skin-tearing strikes, and frightening glare help compose one of the most gifted monsters that has ever stepped inside a wrestling ring. And the less we see him, the more special he remains. Lesnar took WWE by storm in 2002, making an immediate impact by winning the King of the Ring, the Royal Rumble, and 3 WWE Championships inside of his first 18 months on the roster. But just 6 months after that, he would be gone, off to pursue football and MMA, away from the wrestling bubble. Upon his WWE return in 2012, Lesnar took on a reduced schedule, one that treats him as a special attraction, and one that delivers matches that are unlike anybody else's on the roster. Though he may be reviled for not sharing the same enthusiasm for wrestling that die-hard fans do, there's no denying that Brock Lesnar is one of the all-time greats in the business, an evolutionary creature that sits in a class all by himself. I'm Sam from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 things you didn't know about Brock Lesnar. Join us! Number 10. Guard duties. Brock Lesnar has always been the blue-collar sort, growing up on his parents' dairy farm in Webster, South Dakota. Although he would embrace farm life post-success in wrestling and MMA, at the time he wanted much more for himself. And as a high school junior, he sought a different path in life. It just so happened that one day, his school was visited by a National Guard recruiter, and Lesnar, at age 17, was all too quick to sign himself up. Lesnar would spend 9 weeks in the National Guard that following summer, and initially intended to join the Artillery Supply Unit, where he would work with explosives, because nothing's more frightening than Brock Lesnar armed with demolition supplies. However, Lesnar wouldn't be allowed to work with them due to an eye test that revealed he was red-green colorblind. As a result, Lesnar was assigned to clerical duty, basically an office job where he would sit behind a computer all day. He of course had very little desire to do that, and after failing the typing test, left the Guard altogether. Number 9. World's Greatest Connections. As a sophomore at Bismarck State College, Lesnar won the NJPW Heavyweight Wrestling Tournament, earning the attention of University of Minnesota wrestling coach Jay Robinson. Robinson wanted to build a team of unbeatable heavyweights for his program and recruited Lesnar out of junior college in order to help fulfill his vision. According to Lesnar, Robinson wanted him to be the next link of that program, following on the success of one particular heavyweight wrestler at Minnesota who would himself help coach Lesnar. That man was none other than Shelton Benjamin, Lesnar's future Ohio Valley Wrestling tag partner, known collectively as the Minnesota Stretching Crew. Their connection dates back to Lesnar's time in college, as Benjamin, who also roomed with Lesnar, would help shape him into the force that would win the NCAA Division I Heavyweight Wrestling Championship in the year 2000, finishing his amateur career with a record of 106 wins to 5 losses. But that wasn't the only NCAA WWE connection in play. Robinson's former college roommate just happened to be watching that tournament and would help recruit the mighty Lesnar into the WWE. That man, future WWE Hall of Famer, Gerald Briscoe. Number 8. Gridiron Goliath. It's been well documented that upon quitting WWE in 2004 that Lesnar pursued a possible career in the NFL, despite not having played the game on an organized level since high school. Lesnar would make the preseason roster of the Minnesota Vikings for the 2004 season, but would be released before the regular season began. And while this was Lesnar's most famous brush with pro football, it wasn't his first. After fulfilling his amateur wrestling goals in 2000, Lesnar was lining up possible career prospects, and was put in touch with NFL head coach Tony Dungy, who would later lead the Indianapolis Colts to a championship in Super Bowl 41. At the time, Dungy was coaching a promising Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, and, impressed by Brock's physical gifts, recommended that Lesnar put in a tryout. The idea of lining up alongside defensive stalwarts like Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, and Simeon Rice was tempting, but Lesnar knew he had a sure thing waiting for him in pro wrestling and would turn down Dungy's opportunity. Number 7. Big money prospect. The reason why Lesnar turned down a chance to try out for the Buccaneers is that, despite his willingness to bet on himself and his work ethic, it wasn't a sure thing that he would make the team. Instead, he took WWE's offer of a developmental contract and would soon relocate to Louisville, Kentucky in order to begin his training at Ohio Valley Wrestling. And this wasn't a small investment that the WWE was making Lesnar either. According to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, Lesnar was given a developmental contract worth $250,000 minimum per year. That's one of the largest contracts ever offered to a talent with no prior professional wrestling experience, Diva Search and Tough Enough contestants excluded. Lesnar noted that he used his signing bonus to pay off his student loans and had enough left over to buy a motorcycle. As a 22-year-old kid being paid unreal money to train to be a wrestler, Lesnar's life was definitely one worth envying. Number 6, no better opponent. Barely 6 months after wrestling his first match and 9 months after he began training to be a professional wrestler, Brock Lesnar was already working in dark matches on the main roster, primarily teaming with Benjamin. In October 2001, not quite 1 year after winning his first match, Lesnar began working at house shows in singles competition, just 5 months before he'd be called up the night after WrestleMania 18. Lesnar's first singles match on the main WWE roster came on Saturday, October 6, 2001, in front of 6,000 fans in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. His opponent was Alliance member and former WCW US champion Kanyon, whom Lesnar would defeat there, as well as 1 day later close to home in St. Paul, Minnesota. Lesnar's run of singles house show matches and dark matches would continue, working with the likes of Billy Gunn, Tommy Dreamer, Perry Saturn, and Crash Holly, among many others, but it was Alliance MVP Kanyon who got Lesnar's first singles match at an official WWE event. Number 5, that Mania moment. 1 year after his main roster debut, Lesnar worked the main event of WrestleMania 19, challenging WWE champion and fellow amateur wrestling legend Kurt Angle. The match was a spectacular one, worthy of its designation as WrestleMania's closer, but it's often remembered for the scary finish in which Lesnar nearly broke his neck attempting a shooting star press. The move had been a finisher of Lesnar's in OVW, but it went quite badly for him that night at the Safeco Field. According to Lesnar, it wasn't his idea to do the move in the first place, it was the brainchild of John Laurinaitis, who was the agent for the match. Laurinaitis insisted on it, and Lesnar, who hadn't done the move in more than 12 months, kept refusing until Laurinaitis managed, with an assist from Jim Ross, to convince him. Lesnar would practice the move that afternoon in the ring and felt a little better about doing it, but didn't account for how exhausted he would be by that point in the match. Dripping with sweat, he came off the rope awkwardly, and well, let's just say he regretted being talked into it. Number 4, live by the blade. By the fall of 2004, Lesnar was in a rough spot. He'd negotiated against himself to get out of WWE, which imposed a non-compete clause that extended into 2010, and he blindly signed it in his haste to get out. He'd been cut by the Minnesota Vikings and was suddenly low on career options. Factor in money and legal issues, and Lesnar found himself leaning heavily on alcohol and pain pills to manage life between the rock and hard place he created for himself. It was at this personal rock bottom that Lesnar remembers ending up at a tattoo parlor in Phoenix, Arizona, where he ended up getting that very prominent sword tattoo on his chest. According to Lesnar, that tattoo holds a special meaning, saying, "I felt like life was holding a sword right up against my throat, so I went under the ink gun because I never wanted to forget exactly how I felt at that time." Lesnar's career prospect would turn around once he and WWE reached a settlement in the spring of 2006, but the tattoo remains as a reminder of Brock's personal crossroads. Number 3, box office smash. Lesnar would bring the pain to UFC in 2008, capturing the heavyweight title in just his third career fight after knocking out UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture that November. He would become a major attraction for UFC in his 4 years competing in the organization, competing in high-profile fights with the likes of Couture, Frank Mir, and Cain Velasquez. If you ever want to know why WWE values Lesnar so highly, just look at the numbers. When Lesnar fought Couture in November 2008, it marked only the second time in UFC's then 15-year history that one of their pay-per-views did more than 1 million buys. As of today, UFC has had 16 different pay-per-views break the 1 million buy mark, and Lesnar fought on 5 of them, either as headliner or semi-headliner. His knockout victory over Mir in July 2009 drew 1.6 million buys, more than any WrestleMania ever has. In fact, that 1.6 million total, which also accounted for $82 million in revenue for UFC, would remain the UFC record for more than 7 years until the Nate Diaz-Conor McGregor rematch in August 2016 edged it out. Put simply, Brock Lesnar is money. Number 2, global dominance. It was under controversial circumstances that Lesnar won the IWGP Heavyweight belt in October 2005, as WWE contended that his appearing for New Japan violated the terms of his non-compete that he'd signed the previous year. Nonetheless, Lesnar would be recognized as the IWGP Heavyweight Champion until he was stripped of the belt in July 2006. With that win, he became the first man in history to be officially recognized as both a WWE and IWGP Heavyweight Champion. something that only AJ Styles has done since. While it's true that Antonio Inoki technically could be the first claimant to that dual distinction, WWE doesn't actually recognize his win over Bob Backlund in 1979, thus Lesnar is officially the first man to have won both belts per the accepted records. And even if you do consider Inoki to be the first true claimant to that honor, Lesnar would still be the first person to win heavyweight gold in WWE, New Japan, UFC, and at NCAA level wrestling, a grand slam that will likely never ever be equaled. And number 1, Mountain of Youth. Lesnar had truly arrived in WWE when he would defeat The Rock at the 2002 SummerSlam, capturing the WWE Championship in the process. He had only made his TV debut with the company 5 months earlier and had already bulldozed his way to the gold, leaving plenty of crumpled up victims in his wake. He'd also only just turned 25 years old the previous month, and the win etched a place in history that still belongs to him. Brock Lesnar remains the youngest man to ever win the WWE Championship at 25 years, 1 month, and 13 days. The previous record holder was Yokozuna, surprisingly, who won the WWE Championship from Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9, aged 26 years, 6 months, and 2 days. Today, Lesnar is every bit the paradigm-shifting force of nature that he was in his wrestling youth, as WWE continues to promote the one-of-a-kind heavyweight mauler as being virtually unbeatable in his early 40s as he was at 25. And taking one long look at still imposing Lesnar, very few would argue that marketing strategy. And that's our list. I've been Sam from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter here. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. If you like what we do here at Cultaholic, you can check us out on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And no matter what you do, don't ever forget to hit subscribe and join us.